We know that we need to eat better. We know that we need to move our bodies. We know that we need to go to bed earlier and not watch Netflix or Apple TV or whatever it may be. I think one of the biggest keys.
Jeffrey Boadi is a health and wellness advocate who shares healthy plant-based recipes and lifestyle tips, which have helped him amass millions of views across social media.
There's this belief that going vegan automatically makes you healthier, but that's not the case. You can eat the most unhealthy vegan diet. A lot of people within the vegan space, they just take meat off their plate and think, right, I've done it. But that's only half the battle. You need to know where your protein sources are going to come from. You need to know where you're going to get key nutrients from. So all of that kind of led me to, we take a very, very reactive approach to health, right? So we look at something, we tend to make changes when something is wrong. A lot of these diseases, like lifestyle diseases as we call them, so things like type 2 diabetes, obviously obesity, heart disease as well, these are all linked to the kind of foods that we consume.
Those who know me, no, I love my dessert.
Yeah.
Talk to me about dessert. Like, is there such a thing as healthy dessert?
The way that I see it is like,
damn, I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. Hi guys, welcome to another episode of What My Best Friend Does, where we talk to best friends in hope of inspiring you to take immediate action. Guys, today's one, we're inspiring you to take action with your health, all right? Today I'm joined by the health and wellness expert, Jeffrey. How you doing, bro?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Should be
Bro,
good.
my pleasure. We like to start with a little icebreaker in this podcast. What did you want to be growing up, bro?
I want to be a professional footballer.
Chalk it up. There's another one. Another one lost to the game.
Yeah. No, so it's actually, I actually went, so I played a bit of semi-pro, obviously in the UK, trained with some lower level.
What position?
Striker.
Okay.
Played for some lower level trained with some lower level pro teams, Chester City, like Hillingdon Borough, that kind of stuff. Then in 2010, I actually traveled to America.
Okay.
Trying to break into, try and play pro over there. So training with like Chivas USA and some other lower league teams.
What was the quality like back then?
I mean, still, it was decent.
It was good, yeah?
Yeah, it's not bad. Obviously, MLS is a lot better now. 2013, I went to Norway. I was training with a second division club over there.
Okay.
2015, I tried to go to Austria.
Wow.
Because I think, you get to a certain point where, like, you get to a certain age in the UK and you're going to be struggling to really, like, make it at any kind of decent level. So then your next option is to really try and go abroad somewhere. Yeah. So I was just trying to go here, there and everywhere.
Bro, fair play.
Didn't quite work out, but, had some good experiences.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Had some great experiences.
That shows, like, the love and passion you had for trying to make it.
Yeah.
Bro, I love it. So you obviously wanted to be a pro footballer. Yeah. You're now a health and wellness expert. I suppose my first question is, what is your mission?
So I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I think since I went plant-based in 2017, was just the lack of understanding around how our dietary choices. And I think obviously compared to back then, compared to now, it's way more in the forefront of people's minds. But still, I think it's a very niche thing in terms of people understanding just how important healthy practices are. Yeah. So my mission is to make it accessible, to make it kind of in terms of like nutrition and obviously the other areas of health, sleep, training, stress management, things like that, to make it like accessible for people to actually make healthier changes. Because look, we live very healthy, we live very busy lives. Yeah. Like we're all working, we've got this, that, family, events, this, that, and the other. So, a lot of people think that it takes a lot for them to just be healthy or just to start getting on that journey of health, but it really doesn't. Okay. Like it just takes an awareness of kind of cultivating your environment to help you make the healthier choice more easily, but also just trying to do what you need to do anyway, and trying to find the time to do it and really just putting it at the forefront of your mind in terms of having it as like a priority. Yeah. So it's just about trying to get people to eat better, show people recipes in terms of how they can kind of get them into their lifestyle. Obviously, I'm plant-based and been plant-based since 2017, so sharing healthy, protein-rich plant-based recipes that can lend itself to training and recovery and things like that. That's kind of a bit of a nutshell.
I'm listening to you speak and I'm like, am I sure I'm ready? Am I sure I'm ready to make it a priority? But hopefully, we're going to get to the end of this conversation and I'm going to take some action as well. Because, bro, I've been so excited. I think I've told you. All right, you mentioned the fact that you went plant-based in 2017. Talk us through your journey to that point and what was the trigger for making you go plant-based?
So I'd really never thought about going plant-based or vegan diet. Obviously, growing up in a Ghanaian household, you're eating lots of animal products, lots of eggs, lots of fish, meat, everything like that. as normal. And obviously as someone who was training since I've obviously been playing football for so long, been playing other sports, tennis, rugby in school. So like the whole nutrition side of things, for me, the extent of my knowledge was eat as much meat as you can for protein, drink as much milk as you can for calcium. That was really all I knew. And like the typical gym bro diet to put on muscle, your chicken, your sweet potato, broccoli, that kind of stuff. So I was introduced to a documentary called What the Health on Netflix. And I always caveat this by saying that nutrition documentaries probably aren't the best place for the vast majority of people to get their nutrition information from. Yep. However, for me, it was, and they can be quite biased as well to kind of lead people towards a specific way of eating. But for me, it was like, I saw it and obviously saw the bits that I felt, okay, that's a bit extreme. But it got me thinking enough to be like, okay, this is really interesting. It kind of outlined the links between diet and disease, which I'd had no real kind of conscious thought of. And then from there, it was like, obviously they were kind of extolling the virtues of a whole food plant-based diet, something I'd never really thought of or heard about. So then I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And it just shifted my mindset. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, there was so many interesting things within the documentary. And I was just like, I'm going to go plant-based. Okay. So overnight I went plant-based. And I remember that it's funny because I was eating, when I was watching the documentary, I watched it twice. When I was watching the documentary the second time, I was eating like a prawn stir fry, which was amazing. By the way, it tasted great, amazing.
Still remember it because it was his last one 8 years ago.
But yeah, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is very interesting. So overnight, I switched to a plant-based diet. Now, obviously, where I'd been training and building muscle in the gym and things like that, I wanted the diet to still lend itself well to being able to do all of that. So whereas a lot of people, and I'm sure we'll discuss this at some point in the conversation, a lot of people within the vegan space, they just take meat off their plate and think, right, I've done it. But that's only half the battle. You need to know where your protein sources are going to come from. You need to know where you're going to get key nutrients from. So all of that kind of led me to do a real deep dive into how I can like best optimize this diet. So that was reading books, reading scientific papers, listening to podcasts, listening to like other doctors within the kind of plant-based space, and kind of just formulating a diet and a bit of trial and error for the next sort of weeks, and formulating the diet to basically work best for me. But after 2 weeks, I was feeling some incredible benefits. Yeah. Like I felt like my sleep was much better. I was sleeping a lot deeper. My energy was a lot better. I had more clarity of thought. I just had more vibrancy in general. And it's funny because maybe if it had gone the other way and I started feeling terrible, I may not have continued with it 7.5, 8 years later. So yeah, I just felt all of these incredible benefits, and then that was what continued to prompt me to dive deeper into it. Okay, let's think about certain key nutrients, B12, iron, calcium. Where am I getting them from? Where am I sourcing them from? Just to make sure that I was not going to be kind of running into any kind of nutrient deficiencies, getting adequate protein, and just making sure that I was still able to train, build muscle. And there were some things that I kind of rode along the way in terms of mistakes. So one of the biggest ones is, because plant-based foods are less calorie dense than meat, right? So if you eat the same volume of food without meat, you're naturally likely to be eating less calories. Okay. So that means you need to increase the amount of volume of food that's on your plate. But of course, where you're not going to be in a calorie surplus because the foods that you're consuming are, unless you're eating a lot of the very calorie dense foods like the avocados, the hummus, and even though obviously those are good to add in for various reasons, but yeah, so little things like that were just a part of the journey.
Whoa. Calorie dense. Yeah. See, look, this is where my education starts, because I feel like I maybe need less calorie dense foods, because the calorie dense foods are where they really sit on you. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, they're just higher in energy, right? Because obviously weight loss, for example, is all about energy balance, like the amount of calories that you burn at rest and obviously within activity during the day, and then obviously the amount of calories that you take in is what you're eating, right? So obviously if you've got you've got something called your basal metabolic rate, which, just to put it basically, is the amount of calories that your body just burns just at rest.
Little
right?
2K.
Something like that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I know that.
But then obviously if you think about the foods that you're consuming that's energy as well, right? So obviously wherever the balance is, if you're burning more than you're eating, you'll naturally lose a bit of weight. But if you're burning less than you're eating, you'll naturally put on weight, right? So one of the things that I encountered was, because I was keeping the same volume of food when I moved to a plant-based diet, my energy balance was that my calories that I was burning was actually higher than what I was consuming. So I was in almost like in like an unwanted calorie deficit. So I lost a couple of kg, but I recognized that quite quickly, and then started adding a lot more of the kind of calorie dense foods. So things like avocado, healthy fats from like walnuts and hemp seeds, foods like lentils, tofu, tempeh, which are really, you know, good amounts of calories as well. And then of course, just slightly increasing the volume and the amount of food that was on my plate. And I was able to kind of correct that.
I mean, what a first world problem. I just lost a little 1-2 because I ate the same amount of calories. First world problem if I ever heard one. Nah, as a little bit of a chunky brother who goes gym, bro. I'm about to go on holiday in 2 weeks, bro. I'm about to do the same thing. There's so many questions I have off the back of what you just said there. The first one was like going back to the documentary that you watched.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that like there were all these links between diet and disease that you weren't familiar with. Like, what are some of those links that the typical person might just not be familiar with?
So a lot of these diseases, like lifestyle diseases as we call them, so things like type 2 diabetes, obviously obesity, but that obviously can be characterized by hormonal issues as well. It's not just a diet problem. Heart disease as well. These are all linked to the kind of foods that we consume. So heart disease has been consumed to excess consumption of saturated fat, and you can get saturated fat in, you know, high fat animal products. There is some in dairy, but it's not as deleterious as what's in the higher fat animal products. And then of course, like the lack of movement in one's life. So lack of training, lack of, you know, just naturally just moving around. We're not supposed to be living sedentary lives. So, but yeah, I think as I said, the documentary kind of pointed me to that. And I'd never considered that the disease states actually can be induced by how we eat. Like, I never really thought about that. I just thought that people were just unlucky with, you know, if you get type 2 diabetes, you're just unlucky. Or you get, you know, even some cancers have been linked to the way that we eat and the nutrients that we're getting and deficiencies and things like that. So of course, that's not always the case. Of course, we have to caveat that by saying that, you know, you can be the healthiest person and still come down with a chronic disease. So it's not to say that diet will cure everything, but lifestyle does play a huge role in how we just end up living and whether we live a long and healthy life.
Mad. And on that, like, why is it that people don't prioritize lifestyle?
I think it's just never really been taught to people, to be honest, from a young age. We're never really encouraged to be mindful of it, right? When we're younger, we're in school, we're taught all these things that don't really matter, really, like history and all of this stuff that we're not actually going to use in our day-to-day lives.
Facts.
Not like, why do I know that the Battle of Hastings was in 1066? It's irrelevant.
Why do I need to know that Henry had 6 wives?
It's irrelevant to my life. But I
facts.
don't know what kind of foods I should be consuming, right? So a lot of people are still very surprised when they come down with some kind of condition, right? If you think about like someone gets a diagnosis for like type 2 diabetes or heart disease, in many cases there's often a lot of surprise, right? Because I think we have this belief that there are like 2 states. You're either healthy or you're sick, right? But a lot of these diseases, for example, like the type 2 diabetes, it has what's called like a long latency period, right? It's a disease characterized by insulin resistance, which builds up over time based on your lifestyle habits for a long period of time. So the day before you get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, that you weren't healthy, like you were on the way to it. It's like a spectrum, right? Think of health as like a spectrum, you know, and we're all somewhere on that spectrum based on our lifestyle habits, right? So you can either be very, very healthy, you're sleeping right, you're eating whole foods, you're training, doing all of these things, or you can be very, very unhealthy, or you can be somewhere in between. So I think maybe there's just a lack of understanding as to how our bodies operate. And again, I don't blame people necessarily. However, there is an abundance of information now, which kind of makes it like, in some ways, there's no excuse to not like make some kind of strides towards making better health. But of course, there are so many factors that are in the way, socioeconomic factors, busy lives, large families, and then people struggle to just find the time to make changes that even at like a really micro level to benefit their health. So yeah, there's a lot of factors, a lot of obstacles, but as I say, there is still so much information out there. And ultimately people do know what they need to do. For whatever reason, it's just not prioritized.
I love that. And as you spoke there, I think like, why is it like not more readily available, like measuring it? Because it's one thing knowing that you need to do these things, but I think I've seen you post like people should be getting their bloods measured once a year. Like, why is that not more readily pushed, I suppose? And why is it not taught in schools that we should be going, measuring our blood, and this can give us an indicator, some of these like leading indicators that you've mentioned?
I think that's a good question. And I think the main reason, I think, is because, and whether this is down to how kind of modern medicine has kind of done things, or the kind of the healthcare system, is that health is we take a very, very reactive approach to health, right? So we look at something, we tend to make changes when something is wrong, right? I always believe that kind of suffering is what creates change in humans. Whereas if we take a more proactive approach to our health, just get on top of things, right? I've been a vocal advocate for getting, and you don't even have to get like a really, really detailed blood test done, but like certain markers are really, really important. So cholesterol, to see your risk of a potential heart attack further down the line. Things like nutrient deficiency, so iron, things like that. Vitamin D is obviously very, very important. Adequate levels of vitamin D are linked to reduction in so many different disease states. A lot of different cancers have links to reduce vitamin D, to adequate levels of vitamin D. So I think because blood testing is a very, very proactive, preventative approach to health, it doesn't really align with how kind of health is looked at in society, right? We take it for granted, right? We only consider it when something's wrong. We believe it's just like, in some ways, health is our birthright. However, we have to actually take action towards, being able to maintain it and putting in the place that we want to put it into. So I just believe that kind of reactive versus proactive approach is kind of what holds a lot of people back, and they think, I'll come to it later, or that's what we see with men. For example, this is an issue with men a lot of the time, where if they have a problem or they have something that maybe doesn't seem right, they'll kind of just brush it off and be like, I'll go to the doctor another time. It's fine. It's cool. Simple blood tests can potentially help to save your life in many ways.
Wow. Do you think some people are scared?
Yeah.
And like, because as you're talking, I'm like, maybe I don't want to know, because if I get that blood test and it says I got the cholesterol, maybe I can't have that Kipling cake when I get home. I shouldn't have the Kipling cake anyway.
You know what? It's a very, very good point, and you're absolutely right, because I do think that in some ways ignorance is bliss. If you don't know, you might just be like, what? Let me just carry on. And if
vibes FT.
Exactly. Vibes FT. I'll just take that chance. If it means that, further down the line, I might have to do something or have a stent in, one of my, my coronary artery because I've had an issue, fine. So there is a bit of fear. Even when I get my blood test done, and I feel like I've been living very, very well in terms of my health for like 7.5, 8 years now. Even when I get my bloods done, I'm like, oh God, what's this?
Mate, if you're worried, I ain't got no chance, bro. I ain't got no chance, my goodness.
No, but I get it. Because it's like you're waiting, there's that kind of tension, you're waiting for something. So I think it's, again, I don't want to sit and blame people. I genuinely just think that the way that health is kind of portrayed in society is very, very reactive, as opposed to taking like that step forward and trying to get on top of things. And again, maybe people don't want to take those chances in terms of checking those things out, because they may be then forced to change their habits. Because when you get empirical data, when you get the numbers on the piece of paper and you get a GP or another healthcare professional explaining them to you, you can't argue with that. You can't really argue with the data, right? It's not subjective. It's there in stone. So maybe there's that kind of element of, actually, I don't want to see that, because then I might be forced to make the changes that I know I need to make, but for whatever reason, I'm putting off.
I knew this was going to happen when I had this conversation. My last question on that, like, to somebody who's listening to this conversation and they're teetering on the edge of like taking that action, these blood tests, are they like accessible via NHS? Is it something that you've got to book privately? Like, what's the cost implication as well with like cost of living and everything?
And that's another thing as well. There is a cost to that. Like, so NHS, you probably won't be able to get a lot of the markers that you would be able to go if you go to like a private kind of home delivery blood test service. So there are tests out there, and I'm not sponsored by any of these. So there's like, you've got a company called Thriver, you've got another company called Randox.
Randox is where I got my bloody COVID.
They do that. Yeah, they
give us some peas now.
They do like kind of preventative blood tests. In the US, they've got one called Inside Tracker. So I always advocate for going to those people, because if you go to the NHS and say that you want a blood test, they probably won't give you what you need, because I think, again, and it's fine, because they're probably saving them for when they really matter, when they're checking if someone's, inflammation levels, certain markers for cancer are high. So they want to be like, actually, we're going to save these resources for people who we feel need them more, which I completely understand. So in that respect, you should really go to one of these kind of direct to consumer. And what you end up getting, so I typically use Thriver. So what you end up getting is you'll get your test done, you get an app, they'll send you the kit, you send off a little finger prick, you send off your blood.
Oh, that's all it is, a little finger prick, because that was going to be my next thing.
No,
I thought I was going to have to
you can do finger prick, or you can go to, cause sometimes it's quite difficult to get blood out, or you can go to certain clinics where they'll be linked to the company.
Yep.
They'll send your blood off, and then within a couple of weeks, you'll have in your app, you'll have basically all of your results. And again, you can go and do like questionnaires on these websites to kind of determine what kind of blood test would be suitable for you. Mm-hmm. And then you will get like a list of all of the different things showing you whether you're kind of out of range, or you're at bottom of the healthy range, or at the top of the healthy range, or in the middle. And again, I think that's also really good as well, because if you were to get a blood test on the NHS, if you're just in range, they'll be like, yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
However, for example, I remember one of the blood tests that I did a couple of years ago, I was in a slightly lower normal range for a nutrient called folate, right, which is super important. So, but if I'd gone through like the NHS, they would have been like, yeah, it's fine. So then for me, it meant that, okay, let's get more dark leafy greens into the diet. Let's maybe add a B complex supplement into the diet if I need to. And that kind of helps me to have an understanding of exactly what I need to do. And as I said, with the app, it will kind of, you have like a review from a GP. They'll tell you exactly where those levels are, what you need to potentially improve, and how you can do it. Mm-hmm. So it's all very like straightforward. It gives you all the tools to do it. Again, cost implications, you're looking at anything from like £100 to like 200 odd pounds, depending on how many markers you want to get tested.
Yeah.
But I think it's for once a year. I think that's a very, very smart investment to make.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to. Funny, me and AJ actually talk about this quite a lot in terms of because he's not like so fond of getting blood tests, and I understand.
And he's a doctor, just FYI.
I understand why though, because some people can like get very, very like, oh, I've got to do maybe 2 or 3 blood tests a year, and then you start getting a bit like, you know, anal with it in some ways. But I think if you're just someone who just wants to just have a little check, know what you need to do, I believe it can be really, really beneficial.
Yeah.
So,
and also it's like, it might cost £100 or £200, and don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money. But what's the price? Everybody wants to live for as long as possible.
Well, exactly.
We're all a little bit of Brian Johnson. Yeah. Like we all got a little bit of Brian in us. You know what I mean? Everybody wants to live as long as possible in a as healthy way as possible. Yeah. So it's about weighing it up. Like how important is it to you? And if it is, maybe we dip it into the savings. I need to get myself some blood tests.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I understand. Like I think, you know, costs is obviously something, and it's not going to be maybe accessible to everyone. But I do think there are a lot of people out there who maybe do have the means, who could potentially look into it. Because, and again, just once a year, get it done at the start of the year, kind of see where your baseline is at. And if you've got, maybe there's a kind of argument for some people maybe getting 2. So if you've got like real nutrient deficiencies across the board, right, whether it's your vitamin D, your B vitamins, iron, you can maybe do 1, make all the lifestyle changes that you're going to be advised to make, and then retest again to see where you're at in like 6 to 9 months. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a huge advocate for it. I get one done every single year. I think it's really important.
I love it, and like you deserve that deal. I know there was no sponsorship, but Randox, Thriver, them man. If any of you watch this, just give me a little break. You get me? No, I'm joking. So look, bro, we went off on a tangent, but like it was necessary. Yeah. Where I actually want to bring it back to. So you've mentioned the fact that you are plant-based, right? Mm-hmm. So that makes you vegan. Yep. What is the difference between being a vegan and being a vegetarian?
Vegan is an ethical standpoint, right? It means the avoidance of any kind of animal byproducts, whether it's through food or clothing or whatever it may be. Now, of course, from a dietary standpoint, which is where I've kind of gone into this field, people would say, oh, it's more plant-based, but it's like vegan is just an easier term because it's more easy to understand, right? So vegan is, from a dietary standpoint, you're not consuming any animal products. So no meat, no dairy, no eggs, no fish, most cases no honey. So any animal derivatives you're not consuming. Yeah. Vegetarians, they don't consume any flesh, but they consume eggs and dairy. Yeah. And there's like lacto-ovo, there's all these other kind of like different classes where people maybe sometimes eat dairy but they don't eat eggs, or they eat eggs but don't eat dairy. So but at a kind of core level, vegan is no animal byproducts. Vegetarian is you're consuming egg and dairy.
And then my other basic Becky question, like, does becoming a vegan make you healthy? Because I think you hear vegetarian, you hear vegan, you're like, oh, no meat, I'm going to lose weight. Like, what is the reality?
Well, this is a good question because it doesn't. There's this belief that going vegan automatically makes you healthier, but that's not the case. You can eat the most unhealthy vegan diet out there. You can eat Oreos, you can eat crisps, you can eat sandwiches with nothing in them, like whatever it may, tomatoes and whatever. Health is, look, I think you can be healthy on a number of different diets, right? You can be healthy on a whole food plant-based diet. You can be healthy on an omnivorous diet. You can be healthy on like a Mediterranean style diet or a pescatarian diet. I just think that there are certain themes that people need to kind of adhere to. So in my view, I think you want to be looking at getting good amounts of fiber. I know we're going to touch on fiber, why it's important. Good amounts of fiber into the diet through a variety of different plant foods. Keeping your ultra processed foods very, very low. So junk foods, like that's obviously the killer for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Keeping those low, minimizing or just like eliminating them. Particularly if you're trying to like get on a journey, but minimizing them. Like if you want to have a little every now and again, fine. But make sure that the vast majority of your diet is whole foods. Keeping like high fat foods quite low. You know, so like very fatty cuts of meat. Not to say you eliminate them, you don't need to eliminate them, but just kind of being mindful of that. Obviously hydration, and then adding things in that I think are beneficial to foods like fermented foods, like sprouts, like all these different aspects. But you can do that on a variety of different diets, right? As I said, you can also eat a very, very unhealthy vegan diet where you're not getting in adequate amounts of protein, you're not getting in a diversity of plant foods into the diet. You're just saying that you're vegan because I remember when I first started my journey, people would almost be like straight up, animal products are bad, right? Don't eat them, they're terrible. And actually, when I first went, there was maybe like, you kind of get lured into it a little bit, but that's not what a lot of the studies say about nutrition, right? You don't say that animal products are bad. So you have to be mindful of how you formulate a plant-based diet or a vegan diet, whatever it may be, to make sure that it actually lends itself to good health.
And then like on actually formulating a good diet, I know you talk about like the importance of whole foods. So can you like, how do whole foods differ from ultra processed foods? Man, I'm going on a tangent, but you see like corn as an example, which is like a meat substitute. Is that ultra processed?
So to be clear, not if a food is ultra processed, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like really bad for you. So like a protein powder is ultra processed, right? Because it's gone through a level of processing. However, you've got nutrients in there that are going to be beneficial to your health. You've got protein in there. You might have some digestive enzymes. You might have some other kind of minerals or whatever it may be. So the ultra processed foods that we obviously want to be steering clear of is the junk foods, right?
Okay.
It's the McDonald's, it's the pizzas, it's the refined white bread, it's the white pasta, it's things like that which have had the
He's basically just talking about what I ate last week. No, I'm joking.
It's the foods that have had all of the nutrients stripped out of them, right? Something like corn can probably find its way into a healthy dietary pattern because you're getting good amounts of protein there, particularly if you're someone who's not consuming animal products and you like it, then fine. I wouldn't have it as like a cornerstone of my protein consumption because I would much rather have foods like tofu and tempeh, which are way more minimally processed, and then like beans, lentils, chickpeas, which are just whole foods and super healthy for you. I think that those are really the main differences, and trying to get those foods, like limit those foods in the diet and kind of bring in more of those.
What about like tin stuff? So like me, if I'm making a bolognese, like back in the day, not so much now, man might use that domio, you know, when is your domio day?
Well, again, that would probably be classed as an ultra processed food, but you can just use like
chopped tomatoes.
Chopped tomatoes, things like that.
Okay. It's making sense. And you know, you mentioned the fact there, you know, your whole foods. What are the key foods that we should be consuming? I know we touched upon fiber, but this might be a good segue into that.
I think from a plant-based standpoint, you want to be looking at like 6 food groups, maybe add a 7th. So you've got fruits. So we all know what fruits we should be eating. I love berries. Berries are basically one of the healthiest foods on the planet. Bananas, melon, watermelon, mango, all these different foods, get them into your diet, right? So fruits and then vegetables, variety of different colored vegetables, broccoli, tomatoes, whatever it may be, like see what you like and consume them regularly. Then you've got nuts and seeds, and these are really important for healthy fats, different minerals, different kind of antioxidants as well. So some of the ones that I like are hemp seeds, walnuts, chia seeds, pumpkin seeds, very, very healthy. Pumpkin seeds in particular for men. Very, very good for sperm health. Really high magnesium as well. So I get them into my oatmeal every single day. And then whole grains. So foods like, I love oatmeal. is oatmeal just an easy vehicle to add like nuts and seeds, fruit, spices, things like that. And then legumes, so chickpeas, beans, lentils, edamame, things like that. And then you could probably add another section on there, add mushrooms into the mix. Mushrooms are amazing food.
I eat a lot of mushrooms to be
fair. Yeah. Mushrooms are amazing. And then herbs and spices, of course, to season your food. So yeah, those are, and again, if you focus on these foods, even if you have, you know, I'm not, I wouldn't say that I'm dogmatic in the sense where like I'm like everyone needs to be plant-based, because that's not really realistic. And that to be healthy, that's not really the case, right? But if you're getting a lot of these foods into your diet, even with some animal products, like leaner animal products, whether that's salmon or whether that's lean chicken breast or whatever it may be, sardines, you're still going to be healthy because you're getting a number of different plant foods into the diet. And I'm sure we'll talk about how that benefits gut health, and you're getting good amounts of fiber. That's really beneficial for your gut bacteria. So yeah, those are like the main groups that we should be looking at.
And then just on that, like you mentioned fruit, right? So maybe you know, I'm not one of the people who does all of the research, but smoothies.
Yeah,
I see you do a lot of smoothies. I used to do a lot of smoothies. I think I've seen something like when you blend fruit, it like you almost putting in too much fruit and like you're overpowered with sugar. Like, is that a thing or no?
Well, look, I think this is where I get kind of frustrated, because that kind of information confuses people even more. Put it simply, people aren't even consuming enough fruits and vegetables for that to be a problem. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, they're not even consuming fruits and vegetables to that degree to have to then start to worry about, oh, should I blend this? Should I blend that? One thing about fruit, particularly, like, if you juice fruit, you obviously then strip the fiber away, right? So then that can have a higher impact on your kind of glycemic load in terms of your raising your blood sugar, right? But if you put it in a smoothie, you've still got the fiber, you've still got the antioxidants, you've still got that pulp, which is going to slow the release of those sugars into your bloodstream. And then, of course, if you then add fats and protein alongside of that, that will then help to manage your glycemic control even further. So I don't have any issues in terms of like my blood sugar spiking, because in my smoothies, I'll have like frozen berries, I'll put banana in there, but I'll also put like nuts and seeds, hemp seeds, walnuts. I'll put some oats in there. I'll put some protein powder in there, maybe some almond butter or something like that. So I've got a full spectrum of macronutrients that are going to help to slow that release of sugar into the bloodstream.
And frozen fruit versus normal, is there a difference?
No, I love frozen berries.
Yeah, so do I. I'm just like, I'm just making sure.
I put a post about this the other day, because I think there's maybe been this belief that like frozen fruit is like lower in nutrients, or frozen vegetables are lower in quality. But they're not. They're flash frozen at harvest. There was a study, I think it was in 2010, where it looked at like frozen storage of berries and how it kind of impacted like the vitamin C and the different polyphenols and antioxidants. And it showed that after 4 months, there was no degradation, or no significant degradation at least, of the bioactive compounds within the frozen berries. So yeah, frozen berries are great. I think people should eat more of them, and they're cost effective as well.
That makes me happy, because I eat a lot of frozen. Well, I used to eat. I'm about to
reintegrate. Get more. Yeah, exactly.
But as I'm hearing you talk, like you're so well studied on like just on this area, right? You're an expert. Do you feel like vegans or I will say that, like vegans, vegetarians, are they just more studious when it comes to foods? And like, because I feel like as a normal person, I'm not doing this research, but a lot of times, like I've got colleagues at work who like vegetarian, vegan, like you go out to a restaurant, they're looking at the menu, like they know what I want. Like, why is it you become so much more studious? Is it because you're just so cognizant of what you're putting in your body?
Well, what I would say is that, and this may not be the case all the time with people who go plant-based or vegetarian or whatever, becoming very kind of studious on the topic, but I think if you're someone who wants to do it from a health standpoint, you want to be able to understand it completely, right? In terms of, so like, I think it's, when people go, oh, it's difficult to be, healthy on a plant-based diet, I wouldn't say it's difficult, but I would say it's easier to be healthier or to help be healthy, on an omnivorous diet, just simply because you don't really have to consider that much, right? So with certain nutrients, like on a plant-based diet, there are more considerations as to how to optimize things. I'll give you iron as an example. So you've got heme iron in animal products and you've got non-heme iron in plant foods. And non-heme iron has a slightly lower absorption rate compared to heme iron. So what you need to do is you need to focus on adding foods that are rich in vitamin C alongside those foods that are rich in non-heme iron. So for example, if I'm making like some spinach or something like that, which has got decent amounts of iron, I'll maybe just sprinkle or just drizzle some lemon juice, some citrus on there for vitamin C to help with the absorption. So things like that, those kind of things are important to know because you don't want to be running into problems. So there are things that you do need to know and be aware of when you're shifting to a plant-based diet.
Have you run into any problems?
No. I mean, the only one that I mentioned before was the calorie issue. But in terms of keeping on top of my nutrient levels, for me particularly, I became a real student of it. And some people may have kind of varying levels of interest in it. But I think for the most part, if people who are trying to be healthy on a plant-based diet, they probably have a bit more of an awareness and just an understanding of, okay, how am I going to do this? How am I going to optimize this? And that's probably why you're seeing people be a bit more studious with regards to that.
Mate, the lessons I'm learning today, you've spoken about iron. You said the fact that most people, they just don't eat enough fruit and veg.
Yep.
We've touched upon fiber. What are the common things that people are missing from their diet, and why are they so important? And people should be cognizant of making sure they get the required amounts in their diet.
Yeah, I mean, as we touched on, fiber is super important. I think for females, they should be looking to get sort of 28 grams of fiber a day. Men should be looking to get 35 grams. And these are minimums. I think you should actually be trying to aim for more. And I think on average in the UK, we're getting 10 to 15 grams of fiber per day. But
and I'm probably getting 5. Where do we get fiber from?
Plant foods. That's what I'm saying. They're rich in plant foods. And the easiest ways to get them, for example, black beans, half a cup of black beans give you 7.5 grams of fiber. Chia seeds and flax seeds, these are easy to get into oatmeal. Chia seeds, I think I've got 3 grams of fiber per tablespoon. Flax seeds have got a similar amount or slightly more. Raspberries are a very underrated one. A cup of raspberries gives you 9 grams of fiber. So it's easy, why I'm a big advocate for oatmeal is that oatmeal is and obviously there's good amounts of fiber in whole grains like oatmeal as well. But oatmeal is just a vehicle to get a lot of these healthy foods in because look, oatmeal by itself is pretty dead. It's pretty bland. But if you then add in a tablespoon of chia and flax, you add in maybe a handful of walnuts, you add in some raspberries, your fiber count's already over 15 grams at just one meal. And then you've got the rest of the day to then add some more into the mix as well. And
what's the importance, right? So if you are lacking in fiber, how does that impact the body?
It impacts your digestive health. For a start, you're more likely to be dealing with issues like constipation because what fiber does, there's 2 types of fiber. You've got insoluble and soluble fiber, right? So soluble fiber almost makes a gel-like substance, which basically it kind of greases your intestinal system pretty much. And for women, it's actually really, really important to get adequate amounts of fiber because what fiber does is it binds onto excess estrogen, which is in the digestive system. So I saw a video the other day actually where this lady she switched to a carnivore diet, which is just all animal products diet, all meat, right? And then she talked about, I've got amazing abs, but then I was struggling with acne and I lost my period and things like that because you're not getting enough fiber. That excess estrogen is just building up and then going back into the bloodstream and causing so many problems. So getting more fiber into the diet helps to really just bind and pull that excess estrogen out of the system, and then you can excrete it. And again, it's easy to get into the diet, like chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds as well, whole grains, black beans.
Cheese?
No.
Sorry, let me not give you no misinformation to the listener. Strike that off the record.
Well, this is why, again, I'm obviously a big advocate for plant protein. For people who are on a plant-based diet, get adequate amounts of protein into the diet. You have to think about it a bit more. And look, I think, animal products are fantastic for building muscle. They've got nutrients in them. But one of the advantages that plant protein has over animal protein is that it has fiber bound to it. And where that fiber can potentially reduce and again, the differences may be very, very small in terms of you may have heard things around bioavailability of plant protein compared to animal protein, and fiber can potentially affect the bioavailability. But the percentages are going to be so small that they're not really going to have much of an impact in terms of building muscle and things like that. But what you will get from that extra fiber, improved digestive health, and what you'll get as well from a gut bacteria standpoint is that getting good amounts of fiber into the diet will nourish the bacteria that's in your gut. And then you will then get beneficial impact in terms of reducing chronic disease risk, obviously reducing digestive issues. And again, there are some nuances. If someone's dealing with IBS, they might not be able to eat certain foods, like legumes maybe might irritate the gut. But for a lot of people, they don't have these issues and they're just not getting enough fiber into their diet.
Yeah, I've got 2 questions. So my first is just more around overall gut health, is there anything else people should be doing to improve their gut health, like, and any quick wins? Because people are always looking for them quick wins.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's maybe another thing, like, probably shouldn't be looking for quick wins.
Okay.
I think health and well-being is like a long-term game.
This is why, look,
Yeah.
you know what? It's like a Silk Bang ad, but I'm asking the questions so you don't have to. You're welcome. Yeah, you shouldn't.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a long-term game. I think we've been sold this idea that we can get things quickly, you know, the 28-day shred and all of this stuff that is just, it's all fluff. Like, you know, we're going to be having it very soon where people are going on holiday and they want to get in shape in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, you can't. Just get in shape all year round and just, you know, stay ready so you don't have to get ready type thing. But some good gut health wins, getting fermented foods into the diet. That's a real win in terms of, because what fermented foods is essentially like live bacteria that will populate your gut. There was a study, I think it was in 2021 from Stanford, where they randomized 36 people into 2 groups. So for a 10-week study, they gave one group a high fiber plant-based diet, which is obviously still very, very beneficial for the reasons I mentioned. And then they gave the other group a high fermented foods diet. And it showed that the high fermented foods diet helped to increase microbial diversity. Now, when you have good microbial diversity, that's going to benefit you in terms of reducing disease risk, type 2 diabetes, and then it helped to decrease inflammatory proteins. And one of those proteins, I believe it's called interleukin 6, they saw when they took their blood, they saw that there were decreased markers of that protein. And that inflammatory protein has been linked to type 2 diabetes, it's been linked to rheumatoid arthritis, chronic stress, things like that. So getting good amounts of fermented foods into the diet, so foods like kimchi, foods like sauerkraut, miso, kefir, yogurt, even sourdough.
Yogurt, and we're talking natural.
Yeah, natural, fat. Like, yeah, zero, not necessarily zero.
Not my vanilla onken. I need to be sure.
Well, look, I mean, those foods do have like, can't be cutting corners.
sorry.
No, but like, yeah, any kind of fermented dairy product, right? So yogurts, kefir, coconut kefir, if you're not gonna want to get dairy into your diet as well. Even foods like, I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of Ethiopian food, so I don't know if you've been to any Ethiopian restaurants.
I'm not sure, so I'm going to say no.
You should, because Ethiopian food is incredible.
And
it's
good
amazing.
For you.
And good for you as well. So they have a lot of legumes, and basically there's this, I don't know if you might have seen on like social media, they have this like a platter, right? And it's got like it looks like a spongy bread. It's called injera.
Okay. No.
And that's made from teff. It's made from the grain teff, which is another grain that I love, very, very nutritious and healthy. And that is fermented. It's fermented teff flour essentially. So again, another means to get like a healthy gut promoting food into your diet.
Just one thing I want to say actually, because I was listening to a podcast this week, How to Take Over the World, Brad Wilson, sick, and they actually spoke about how. So back in the day, there was this guy called James Cook, and James Cook helped to map like Australia and all these faraway places before we travelled there. This was like the 1400s or 1600s or something crazy. And they said that his was the first expedition where people travelled and didn't die from scurvy, which is, I mean, I don't actually know what scurvy is, but people's teeth
vitamin C
fall out.
deficiency.
He didn't realise, he took notes, and he said we had to be clean, we had to exercise, and he was also giving them sauerkraut. And like it turns out that it was the sauerkraut that stopped all of his like sailors dying from scurvy.
Oh wow!
But at the time they didn't know. But just going back to what you're saying about like the importance of these fermented foods.
Super interesting.
When you say fermented, because I've seen some stuff about people like making it at home and stuff.
You can,
how is it you go about fermenting food?
So I haven't actually done it myself.
Okay.
So for example, with kimchi or sauerkraut, you essentially like get, from what I remember, you'll get like chopped cabbage, you'll put it into like a container, and then you'll add some salt. And then I'm not sure if you add water or something like that, and you just leave it, and it basically just ferments, and like the bacteria will kind of develop within the product. So that's kind of how you do it. I mean, I've been eating fermented foods for ages.
So you buy them like off the shelf?
I buy them off the shelf from like health food stores or Waitrose or whatever it may be. But you can make them at home, and it's probably cheaper. Yeah,
and it's nice that you mentioned cheaper because when people might think about like becoming more healthy, I think sometimes you hear it's like very expensive, and when you think Whole Foods and all of these places like they're very expensive. Can you affordably live a healthy lifestyle? What's the best way to do that?
100%. Well, the first thing you need to do is make sure that cooking becomes your default, right? Because if you're cooking foods at home, you're naturally just going to be, and you think about the foods that you can bring into your house. So foods like rice, foods like sweet potato, foods like broccoli, different legumes, like whether it's canned or dried, beans, chickpeas, lentils. These are all really cost-effective foods, and there are so many simple recipes that you can find online. I put a lot on my page as well on Instagram. I think where eating healthy becomes expensive is when you pay from a convenience standpoint, right? So if you go to get like some, for example, like the Beyond Meats of this world, they're going to be naturally more expensive because A, you're not actually having to cook, and B, you know, in comparison to the animal-based counterparts, the demand isn't there, so the price is a bit higher. Or if you go to like a salad bar or something, you're not just paying for the food, you're also paying for the convenience of not having to make the food yourself.
Facts.
So it's about cooking. Make that your default. Like try and cook a number of different nights a night. Meal prep is always going to be your friend. Like, I mean, I haven't been doing it as much lately because there's so much going on in my life, but like meal prep is really, really useful. Yeah. And again, like if you think about buying in bulk as well is really important. So a lot of the nuts and seeds that I talk about, I don't get them from like the supermarkets like your Waitrose or your Sainsbury's or things like that. I get them from wholesalers. So I'll buy like a big 1 kg bag of hemp seeds or a big 1 kg bag of walnuts, and I'll just decant them in. I've got these containers with labels on them in my house. So that, because if you go to like Waitrose and you look at like a 500 gram bag of hemp seeds, it will nearly be the cost of a 1 kg bag if you go wholesale. So
it's once again putting in the time.
Exactly.
And the work.
Yeah, and it's about knowledge as well.
Yeah.
As I say, it's not this isn't just like readily available knowledge, right?
Yeah.
We only know what we know, right? We go to the supermarkets and we get what we see. So if someone sees that a bag, 500 gram bag of hemp seeds is like nearly £10, they're gonna be like, I'm not buying that because it's too expensive. Yeah. But you can go to places like Whole Food Earth, buy Forest Whole Foods, buy Whole Foods online. Those are really, and again, no affiliation, but you know, I want to give people the gems. You know, I think you can go and buy really big bags of these healthy foods and just have them in your house, and just way more cost effective.
I love it. And then obviously, we're both African. Yeah. And when I think about our home cooked comforts, you know, your jollof rice, your pounded yam, this, that, and the other, how is it we can go about having the healthiest versions of these foods? Because they're very like oily and carb rich. Would you say reduce the oil?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of us use vegetable oil as well.
Okay.
Which when heated can potentially oxidize and cause a number of different problems because they're not very stable at higher heats. So
I saw you post something about like, the importance of olive oil.
Yeah, so olive oil is good in terms of it's stable at a higher heat, more stable than like certain vegetable oils. Avocado oil is, I think it's the most stable. I think it's 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
So if you can cook with that,
cook with avocado oil and just reduce the oil in general. I think there's so much oil in our food, just reduce it. Portion control as well is super important. Like you're typically just eating too much, you know what I mean? So, you know, it's not like our foods are unhealthy, right? It's the consumption of them in terms of the amounts, it's the oil that we're using. And then, of course, the other elements around health in terms of, are we training? Are we sleeping right? You know, that all factors in as well.
I love it. And you just said something there, portion control.
Yeah.
Do you measure your food? Because, like, you seem very aware of, like, everything. Like, are you one spoonful of hemp seed? You just do a little bit of everything?
Just a little bit of everything. Sometimes, like, if I'm trying to this is something that I don't tend to do very often, but if I'm trying to maybe reduce the fat content in the diet a little bit, I might just do like, I don't know, half a tablespoon of hemp seeds and half a tablespoon of flax seeds, whatever it may be. But I think I've got to a point where I eat quite intuitively. I'll eat until I'm like 80% full, 90% full. I won't eat until I'm bursting. I just don't. And so many of us do that. Like we just eat until we literally can't eat anymore. Sometimes you might do that when you go out, and that's fine. Like you eat with your friends and you just enjoy what's on offer. But yeah, I think I've got to a point where I can eat quite intuitively, and I know what kind of amounts of food work for me.
Okay. This next one, I'm just bracing myself for it because you've just spoken about like portion control and everything. Dessert.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Those who know me, I love my dessert.
Yeah.
I love my cheesecake.
Well, I love cheesecake as well.
Okay. I love my chocolate sponge.
Yeah.
Victoria sponge, this sponge, that sponge. I'm getting sad because I feel like I'm about to have to break up with it. Talk to me about dessert. Like, is there such a thing as healthy dessert? And like, what's your advice for managing the temptation?
Hey, well, look, I think look, I don't want people to feel like being healthy is like a prison, right? Where you can't enjoy certain foods. Like, you can ask my wife, if wherever we go out for dinner, if there's cheesecake on the menu, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get it.
Okay,
completely. Like, it's not in doubt. It's not in question. However, this is it's a relatively infrequent occurrence, right? You know, I've got a bit of a sweet tooth. You know, sometimes I might enjoy some cookies, or sometimes I might enjoy like, you know, something sweet, but it's very few and far between. Yeah. You know, I think you can healthify certain desserts. Like, I've made healthier cheesecake, quote unquote. I've made certain things, and you know, one of the desserts that I do, like sometimes after eating dinner, I might have some coconut yogurt. I'll put some blueberries on there, maybe some dark chocolate, right? Like 70% plus dark chocolate, more antioxidants than milk chocolate. But I don't want people to feel like they can't even enjoy anything. The way that I see it is that you have to have a balance in terms of, like, the way that I see it, 90% of the time, I'm doing everything right. Maybe 95 if I'm really dialed in, but 90% of the time minimum, I'm on the whole foods, I'm training, I'm sleeping at a good time, supplementation at some point. And if you do that, then that 10% won't actually really affect you that much. It's when you're like, when your lifestyle maybe isn't geared towards that kind of, and I think for most people, 80% is actually really good, like that 80-20 rule kind of thing, you know what I mean? So that will leave you in a position where if you're like going out for dinner or whatever it may be, you're not worried about having a cheesecake every now and again. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't affect you. It's part of your lifestyle, because look, we're human, we need to enjoy a little bit. It's when we kind of like, we feel like it's a punishment, right? Then we kind of, you know, go off the wagon a little bit, or I need to burn it off, I need to go and run to get rid of the cheesecake calories. Like, that's not really a healthy place to be with food, you know what I mean? Yeah. You want to get your foundation set, 80-90%, get that sorted. Then if you go out, it's fine.
Okay. I'm going to hit you with another one, right? Because I know there's going to be a few people that listen to this who are in a similar boat. Yeah. So I work for a tech company. Love them, by the way. Yeah. Great culture. But bro, every time I walk into that office, I'm going to go into the office on Monday.
Yeah, snacks galore.
Bro, the Pret-a-Manger chocolate croissant is staring me in the face. The granola, the this, the that. Like, I complain. And it's free, bro. When it's free, you lose, like, you just start acting somehow. So I've got two questions. Yeah. One is, how do I give myself the mental fortitude to get myself out of this because I'm in bondage. I'm in bondage, bro, from all this free stuff. But secondly, to an employer as well, like, what can they do? Because I think they think that they're just like doing right by their employees. Yeah. Like, what are some of the things maybe they should be supplying to our office to nourish us in a more correct way?
Fruit is an easy one. Yeah. But it's kind of boring, isn't it? Like, for most people, it's like, I don't want a banana. I'd rather have like a croissant or like a pain au chocolat or whatever it may be.
But you've mentioned like nuts and
fruit,
bits
nuts and seeds and yogurt and things like that. But I don't know. It's like, is it maybe easier for people just because they know that people are going to eat them and enjoy them and whatnot? I think if for example, sometimes it often takes just one person to make a change, right? So if you go into your office on Monday and you're armed with like a little pot of overnight oats, and you've got some oats in there, you've got some berries, you've got nuts and seeds, maybe a bit of protein powder in there. Firstly, you got to be prepared for people to laugh at you. Yeah. Because that's what will happen. Because the reason why they'll do that is that you're challenging the status quo, right? Because it's not common to adopt healthy approaches in today's society, even though it is completely normal and what our body requires, right? But then if you keep doing the overnight oats, right, you keep doing it, people will ask you, oh, what's that? And then you can speak to them about it and tell them what the benefits are of it. It's happened to me. I used to work at a company in 2018. It's like a kind of Uber for mechanics type company. So I was in like an operations/content role. And this is not too long after I'd gone vegan. So I was going into the office with like overnight oats and things like that. And a few people were asking, what's this? What's going on? You may be thinking I was a little bit weird. I don't know, maybe. Yeah. But I was just like, this is what I'm eating. This is kind of what I'm doing. I'd bring my lunch in as well, like healthy whole foods. And you might get, as I said, ridiculed a little bit because it triggers people who aren't maybe doing things that they would like to have the discipline and the fortitude to do. But then eventually they might actually catch on and be like, oh, maybe I'm going to do that. And that will help to shift the culture a little bit among people. And then that can maybe then go to the higher ups who then might be like, oh, maybe the foods that we're putting out aren't being eaten. Let me speak to, for example, yourself and see what we can get in there, what foods are going to be beneficial. So it's a cultural thing and it's hard to shift, but sometimes it just takes one person. So could be you.
I hear that. I hear that. But I know my office, man.
Yeah.
Damn. There's a lot of snacks.
Well, yeah.
And there's a lot of people that enjoy those snacks.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
And it is fine.
That's fine. But
yeah,
it will make them
for
think.
me.
It makes them think, right? Because if everyone's eating the snacks, then everyone thinks it's normal and it's all right, right? If one person comes in and starts shifting things a little bit, come in with like I don't know, let's say you go in with some grilled fish or whatever it may be, vegetables, healthy foods, right? It will then get to people to start to think. And as I said, they might take the piss out of you to start with, but over time, you keep doing it, you just show that you're not going to be deterred by what people are saying about you. Yeah. That's another thing as well. I think maybe people struggle with staying on the health journey because they're too fearful of the opinions of others. So in that situation where you go in with the overnight oats, you're getting ridiculed, right? I remember a job that I worked in 2017 where someone was saying that they were quitting smoking and all of the other smokers were like ridiculing him.
Oh, bro.
I'm like, he's trying to save his life and you're laughing at him, right? It's ridiculous. And then I think he started smoking again, which is just stupid, right? But I understand it because as humans, we have this desire to want to feel a part of the whole, you know what I mean? And if you're ostracizing yourself a little bit, it can be pretty uncomfortable. But if you're convicted in what you're doing, it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, damn. I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. We've dotted about a bit, but I love it. Like, as you've spoken there, like, are there any misconceptions about a plant-based lifestyle? That's my question.
Yeah, the biggest one, then I'm sure you've heard, is the protein conversation, right? Because of course we've known that animal protein is it's all we've known really for the most part in society, right? Chicken, beef, eggs, fish, whatever. Amazing sources of protein. That's it's obvious, right? Very bioavailable. You can pack on muscle really easily. But there's lots of plant protein sources. You've got tofu, you've got tempeh, which is like a fermented soy product. You've got edamame. You've got seitan, which is like, I don't like the name.
Whoa!
It's a terrible name. As a believer, I don't like that name. But it's not. It's spelled Seitan.
Okay.
So it's like it's like made from wheat gluten, right? It's very popular way back when in like Buddhist monks used to consume it as like an alternative source of protein. Very high in protein. You've got beans, lentils, chickpeas, and then you've got some like small amounts of protein in foods like quinoa, foods like hemp seeds. But those previous ones I mentioned, like your main protein sources. And again, ultimately, when you think about like building muscle, the principles remain the same, mostly remain the same, whether it's plant protein versus animal protein. The big advantage that animal protein has is that, for example, you could eat chicken breast for the rest of your life and you would get adequate amounts of all of the essential amino acids that we need to get from food in high amounts, like no problems whatsoever. But if I was to eat black beans, I'm going to be slightly lower in, I believe it's either methionine or lysine, which is one of the key amino acids. Again, for one of the essential amino acids that we need to get from our diet. So with plant protein, you need to be making sure that you're getting a wide variety of different sources across the board. So in my experience, across the day, I'll maybe look to get, if I have a smoothie or oatmeal in the morning, I'll put a plant protein powder in there, one that's made from pea, brown rice, and pumpkin seed protein. So that's 3 different types of proteins there, which is really good. Then throughout the day, I may have like a lentil bolognese. So that's another different source of protein. And then I might have like a tempeh or tofu bowl with some other foods, broccoli, some quinoa, some like other, avocado, fermented foods in there like that. So I'm diversifying all of my different sources. And then what that will do is that will fill in the gaps in terms of some of the amino acids that might be slightly lower in certain foods versus others. Okay. So that's probably the main consideration. But yeah, once you get that right, you're going to be fine. Like, I've not had trouble building muscle. Like, I weigh like 95, 96 kg now. And when I went plant-based, I was 83.
Oh, wow.
So
you've put on lean mass.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
I love it. As you spoke there, you just spoke about like what your food consists of in a day. Are you cooking 2 to 3 meals a day every day, or do you like bulk cook?
Sometimes I bulk cook. Yeah, I think ingredient prep is a really good thing, because meal prep, people don't like it often because they don't like to eat the same thing all the time, which I completely get. But ingredient prep is really useful. So for example, I could make like a bit of a batch of tofu or like a lentil bolognese, and then I can just add that into other different things. So yeah, and with breakfast for me every day, I work from home, so it's straightforward all the time. Oats takes like 10 minutes to make. Smoothie takes like 10 seconds to make. So those are like my two go-tos.
I'm gonna go back to having smoothies, man, because I used to have them, but I thought I was doing too much sugar. I thought I had too much sugar in them. Like
again, it depends on what you put in it and how you formulate it. And I think smoothies are and again, they're like a vehicle for healthy foods. So you can put in frozen berries and bananas as the base, maybe add some oats, hemp seeds, chia seeds, protein
let
powder.
me talk you through. Let me talk you through mine.
Yeah,
and you
go
can
for
tell
it.
me. So I would start with milk.
Yep.
But it was just normal milk,
Okay.
so skim, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'd put in frozen banana. I'll put in frozen blueberry. I would put in like chia and flax seeds.
Okay, good.
I would do a scoop of protein powder. I think that's. Oh, and maybe like a spoon or two of yogurt as well for a bit of thickness.
Yeah, that's good.
Like some flavored yogurt or something.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah, that's a good start to the day.
And then maybe some peanut butter as well.
Yeah. You're getting a good amount of you could possibly add in like, I mean, you're getting some carbohydrates from the fruit, but you could also maybe add in like half a cup of oats.
Yeah.
Just to, again, bulk it up a little bit more. But that's good. That's like you're getting healthy fats, you're getting protein in there, you're getting carbohydrates in there, you're getting antioxidants from the berries, getting healthy fats and other kind of compounds from the chia and flax. Yeah,
I'm going back to that
because
genuinely I stopped it because I thought it wasn't good for me. I was overcooking myself.
Who told you
I
that?
thought I was putting too much sugar. Like I said, I thought I was.
But this is the thing. Like, okay, bananas are slightly higher in the glycemic index, but then berries are a really low GI fruit, meaning that they're not going to spike your blood sugar.
Okay.
And then, as you say, you're adding in chia and flax, healthy fats. You're adding in protein, so that's going to slow that release of sugar into the bloodstream to give you that sustained energy. How did you feel when you drank it? Were you feeling hungry soon after, or?
No, it's quite substantial.
Yeah,
like they're quite big.
Yeah.
And I got my NutriBullet.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeffrey,
breakfast sorted, done.
This has been so insightful. We're not done, by the way.
Yeah.
But like, where I want to move to next. So we started to speak about some of the meals you put together. I've like been like devouring your content.
Yeah.
Bro, like it seems like you're putting together very nutritious, tasty, quick meals. How is it you go about like finding these recipes and sharing them with your audience?
So when I think about one of the keys that I always tend to like encourage people to do is like plant-based bowls. They're like a really easy way to get, again, like a vehicle to add like good nutrition into your diet. And I think the characteristics of a good plant-based bowl, making sure you get a complex carbohydrate. So it could be a whole grain, could be root vegetable, like a sweet potato, something like that.
Yep.
Make sure your plant protein's on point. So tofu, tempeh, seitan, all the ones I discussed, beans, lentils, chickpeas. Dark leafy greens, make sure you get some of those in there as well. So spinach, kale, Swiss chard, things like that. Then you want to be looking at healthy fats. So avocado, hummus, those are two of my favorites. Maybe like some tahini, which is like pureed sesame seeds, really good source of calcium and healthy fats as well. And then fermented foods, so kimchi, sauerkraut, tempeh is fermented as well, which is great. And then you might be able to add in some other foods in there, like some kind of stew, some kind of broccoli, something like that. And that's a really easy way to just kind of like fill out your bowl with really healthy food. So I like to make a lot of those. Oatmeal is another good way to add these, like a vehicle for all these other healthy foods. And then I always just try and balance my plate with good amounts of protein, complex carbohydrates, and healthy fats. So sometimes recipes just come to me. Like I might be eating at a restaurant, if I'm on holiday with my wife and we go to a restaurant and I'm like, oh, this is good. Maybe I'll try and make some kind of variation of this when I get home. And always, again, I think prioritizing it for health is always really important because I want to share the kind of recipes that I would eat, right? That are going to lend itself to how I'm living. And maybe not, no one has to copy me and be like, okay, you're going to need to do this to live exactly how I'm living. But I want there to be intention and purpose behind the recipes that I'm making. You're getting good amounts of protein for this reason, and that reason. Getting healthy fats because you need X, Y, Z. Complex carbohydrates because you need energy. And then, sometimes recipes just come into my mind. I see someone on TV. I maybe just might be playing around in the kitchen. No,
because and then like you're recording it, like you're informative, and in terms of like that content creation piece, to anybody who looks at your content and is inspired by it and potentially wants to do something similar, like what would your advice be to them?
Well, I think from my standpoint, I think what worked for me is that I was really passionate about it. There's a school of thought where some people say you should follow your passion and then you can make it into a job, and other people say you maybe shouldn't follow your passion, you should get to the money, and then that could give you more flexibility to pursue your passions. I personally think, I mean, it can fall somewhere in between the two based off of any individual's specific circumstances. But I think the thing that's kept me going the most in terms of longevity with my content, so I've really been doing it consistently since end of 2017, start of 2018. Just be really passionate about it. Like, I just love health and well-being. Like, I think it's so important to kind of shoehorn it into your everyday life. And I guess my medium for the most part has been around nutritious plant-based recipes, but then also educating people around the other elements of health. So why training is important, bone density, muscle mass, longevity, all that kind of stuff. I mean, my most viewed post was actually on sleep, which was really interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I did a post in 2023, got nearly 2 million views. It was around just like, I think it was 3 keys to get a better night of sleep. So one of them is just to align your circadian rhythm. So getting to bed at a good time, waking up at the same time. Yeah. And that's with now new information that's come out in terms of getting sunlight into your eyes first thing in the morning. That's really beneficial. Looking at like different compounds, so like magnesium, reishi, L-theanine, these are all really beneficial compounds for sleep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think whilst, you know, nutrition is a huge part of my life and in terms of like my health journey and my process, other elements of health really kind of are really impactful as well, and I like to educate about those too.
And just on that, like we spent a lot of time speaking about like nutrition, but yeah, like what are some of the other things people can do to live a more healthy lifestyle? So I know you've mentioned sleep there, but you can talk a little bit more about the fitness stuff you do.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because there's always a school of thought as to whether nutrition, sleep, or training is the most important.
It's all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, all of them. But I think actually, from what we're now seeing, strength training, resistance training in the gym is arguably the most important, like anti-aging in terms of, look, we're all going to age, right?
Yeah.
But strength training and getting in the gym is like unbelievably important.
Yeah.
Unbelievably important.
Okay.
And look, I think one of the reasons I think many people maybe don't do it is because it has a lot of links to like vanity, because there's been this, you know, push maybe however many years ago where it helps you to look good, right? And a lot of people like to go in the gym to look good, which is fine. Like, I don't think there's necessarily much of a problem with that. But I think now there's more of a shift away from that towards like, okay, this is actually going to benefit me. So I'll give you an example. Bone density, right? One of the biggest issues that we have when we get into old age is fracture risk, right? And what strength training does in terms of lifting weights, it helps so your tendons end up pulling on your bone and muscles pull on your bone, and that helps to strengthen the bone matrix.
Okay.
So it's super important for women as well, because women experience bone loss earlier than men in life. And it's funny because, you know, only now in recent times have women got onto strength training as like a thing, because, you know, so many women don't want to get bulky.
Oh, man,
don't want to turn into Schwarzenegger.
My wife to say, I don't want big arms. I got to stay on the 6 kgs. No shade, man.
It will never happen.
Yeah.
It can't happen. Let's actually just try and focus on getting in the gym first. And if your arms start to get too big, then we can stop. But they won't. And now we're obviously seeing that. So
everyone thinks they're going to turn into Amanda Nunez.
Do you know? This is what I'm saying. But do you know how hard it is?
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is? There's men who have been training for 15 plus years who don't look like they're in the UFC.
Facts.
So let alone women who have lower testosterone, believing that they're just going to become the Hulk and Schwarzenegger, and you know, if they hold a can of Coke, it's just going to just disintegrate in their hands. It's never going to happen, right? So, but it's really important because we're now seeing, as I said, like things like bone loss, lifting weights helps to offset that. Having muscle mass helps to offset sarcopenia, which is essentially muscle loss as you age, and frailty, and you know, lack of bone density, frailty within your musculoskeletal system will have a really, really big impact in terms of how you live, whether you can move, right? When I'm in my 70s, late 70s, 80s, I want to be able to get off the toilet with no assistance. I want to be able to walk around. I still want to be able to go to the gym, right? I still want to be able to do everything that I want to do on my own terms. And strength training plays a massive part in that.
Question. First of all, I hear you. I knew Chess Mondays was helping me out. I knew it.
Chess Mondays.
Yes, I knew it. I knew legs as well. Don't worry. And when you say strength training, are you trying to lift as heavy as possible, or just a heavy amount of weights? And what I mean by that, should you be trying to like hit PBs?
No, you don't need to.
Okay, so it's just PBs. Like heavy weights. Yeah. Getting your 3 sets of 10 or whatever.
Yeah, if that's what works. You don't need to hit PBs. You don't need to risk injury.
Okay.
You just need to work your body against resistance regularly, and that will just have so many benefits in terms of your heart health, your brain, your gut health, your bone density.
And when we're saying regularly, like 3 to 4 times a week?
3 to 4 times a week. I mean, to be honest, 3 times a week is really good. If you're doing that 3 times, you can be healthy in 3 times a week. Yeah.
But actually, there's so many places, because I was going to say, I do that, but then I go home and have a Krispy Kreme. So you got to do it all together. You can't, in the trifecta, you can't like do one and not the other. You have to do it like in combination.
Exactly. And what will happen is that if you do it in combination, so they're all kind of linked to each other, right? If you train hard, you're going to be tired. You're going to want to end up sleeping at a good time. Then when you realize how much your sleep is benefiting your recovery, your how alert you are during the day, your energy, then you'd be like, yeah, this is great. You know, I want to focus on my nutrition as well. See how that can benefit my recovery. See how that can benefit just how I feel day to day. So they all kind of time with each other.
I love it. And then like, where does mobility fit into this as well? Because I lift the weights. Bro, if you see the way I've been walking for the last few days, bro, because I did a stretch after doing legs. I mean, I must be like, people must be listening to this guy's not serious, man. But bro, like my mobility, it struggles, bro. So whilst, you lift, you do the resistance training, what about the stretching and everything else?
Yeah, it's important. Yeah. I mean, I probably don't do enough of that, but I do try at the end of every session that I do in the gym, occasionally, like before I go to bed, stretching, mobility, just moving your joints through a full range of motion. And that will also help with like injury prevention as well. So, you know, you see so many people in the gym like lifting too heavy or not being able to go through full ranges of motion to benefit your bone health and things like that. So mobility is important.
And then in terms of like recovery, are there, like from a plant-based standpoint, are there specific foods you should be eating for recovery, or is it like protein shake? That's where you're going to get.
Well, protein's obviously super important because you need to start getting that. So muscle protein synthesis is that process of where your body then starts to, you know, build new muscle. So that's really important. Obviously, you need to get adequate protein into the diet. But there are foods that you want to be getting in. So blueberries are really good in terms of from an anti-inflammatory standpoint. There have been studies where, you know, blueberry smoothies are consumed and they help to kind of reduce like that kind of delayed onset of muscle soreness or help people get back to peak isometric muscle strength quicker than when you're not consuming blueberries. So that's really important. I think turmeric's another great one. Always combined with black pepper to help with the absorption. There's been multiple studies on the active ingredient in
black
turmeric.
Black pepper and turmeric?
Yeah. But what you do, like, so you could easily put it in like a smoothie, right? I've started doing this a lot more now, putting turmeric and ginger in my smoothies and then a pinch of black pepper. You won't get any taste or anything like that. Because obviously, especially if you've got like berries and plant protein powder and bananas in there.
But you get the benefits.
You get the benefits, exactly. And then ginger is a really great anti-inflammatory as well. I think a plant-based diet is naturally quite anti-inflammatory because you've got so many antioxidants in there. Now, what antioxidants do is they help to dampen oxidative stress, which can come from training or which can come from poor lifestyle habits. So not all inflammation is bad, but it's the chronic inflammation that you want to dampen, and plant-based foods help with that.
Jeffrey. And then final thing, like, you know, you mentioned resistance training. What about like running? You know, these people, 5K gang, 10K gang. I've seen all these people do run club.
Is
it necessary? Like, is it required?
You don't need to go to a run club. I mean, I think run clubs are just...
No, they're good for social, but I mean, like
it's
the
glorified
running,
dating.
the running.
But the running element's great. I think running is... I think that's like our default movement as humans. Like running's good. Like I always feel when I'm running, I feel like a better human, a better athlete, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to be doing like 5Ks. You know, we're seeing on Instagram everyone's doing the marathons and this, that, and the other, and maybe some people can feel a bit inadequate. But like, if you go out for a run and you do 1 kilometer, it's 1 kilometer more than you would have done if you'd sat on the couch.
Facts.
You know what I mean?
So
that's really important. And again, from a heart health standpoint, it's good for cardio. But do you need to run? You can do like cycling. You can do rowing. I think rowing's a great form of cardio as well. But yeah,
it's hard, man. It's hard. Jeff, this has been like such a deep conversation, bro, and like you've been so insightful, so knowledgeable. Like as we do look to round out this section, to somebody who's listened to this point and is looking for healthier outcomes, what would an immediate action or next step be for them, or what should it be?
Well, I think, look, as I said before in the conversation, we kind of know what we need to do for our health, right? We know that we need to eat better. We know that we need to move our bodies. We know that we need to go to bed earlier and not watch Netflix or Apple TV or whatever it may be. I think one of the biggest keys to actually make healthier outcomes is to improve the environment that you live in, right? Improve the environment around you. So an example from a dietary standpoint, right? If you go to the supermarket, leave the processed foods on the shelf, because if you buy them and you bring them into your house, you're then relying on willpower to stop you from eating those foods that you know shouldn't be going.
And Lord knows that's finished.
No, that's what I'm saying. Look, willpower is a finite resource, right?
Yeah.
It's going to run out.
Yeah.
So, and when you're in the supermarket, the barrier to getting these foods is money. So actually, you might just, it's a lot easier to be like, I don't want to spend the money, versus getting home, you've got all the Krispy Kremes or whatever it may be there, and to be like, oh, let me stop, let me not. You're going to eat them. You're going to eat them. So cultivating your environment, make sure that the foods that you bring into your home are lending themselves to good health. And even little things like, if you make a commitment to yourself that you're going to go to the gym, lay your gym clothes out. And then you see them when you wake up, or you see them before you go to bed. That helps to just click your environment and your mind into gear to be like, I've said I'm going to do this, I'm going to go ahead and do it. You know what I mean? So your environment is so important. And look, we live in a very what's called an obesogenic environment. So you just go down any high street, Burger King, McDonald's, poor quality foods. It's difficult. It can be very, very difficult. That smell of McDonald's for a lot of people, can lure them in, and I get it. So that's where the environment, and it's tough for people who maybe live in those areas. It's very, very difficult. But if you're able to kind of just make little tweaks to better your environment that you live in, that are going to contribute to better health, you should always try and take them.
Jeff, man. Thank you, man. We do have a quick fire round.
Yeah.
Are you ready for it?
Go for it.
Would you rather inspire one influential person to go vegan, or a whole community?
A whole community.
Would you rather have 1 million social media followers, or write a best-selling vegan book?
Probably write a best-selling vegan book, because that can potentially help
Get
me
you
reach
the
more
million
people.
followers.
That can help me reach more people to then have more impact.
Yeah. Would you rather host a vegan cooking show or a podcast?
Maybe actually the cooking show, because I went on, I don't know if you saw, I was on Jamie Oliver the other day.
I know.
So that was recorded last July, and it was really fun, and it got a really good response. And maybe the cooking show.
Okay, I love it. Would you rather have unlimited workout energy or instant recovery?
Instant recovery.
Okay. Would you rather create a global vegan product or open a chain of vegan restaurants?
Global vegan product. Restaurant business is hard, man.
Would you rather have a fitness app or a wearable tracker?
Fitness app.
Okay. And then finally, dream dinner guest.
First name that came to mind was Novak Djokovic.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm a big tennis fan.
Yeah.
And I know he's a very health focused guy. So I think conversations with him around health and well-being.
He's actually plant-based as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's fully vegan, but I know he does eat a very, very plant-forward diet. So that would be really interesting.
He's very flexible.
Talk about
no
tennis.
Diddy as I say that. Man, doing a lot of the tennis.
So we can talk about tennis, health, those things that are important. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, man, thank you so much for this conversation. We do have a closing tradition on this podcast. Like, with everything that you've been through, knowing what you know now, like, what advice would you give your younger self, and would you still be doing the same thing?
Well, with my football journey that I was on, I feel like maybe towards the end of it, I held on to it for a bit too long, because I felt like my identity was rooted in that. But your identity isn't rooted in any job or any title or anything that you may be, whether football or whatever it is. It's about, I guess, the kind of person that you are, the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of person that maybe wants to help people or whatever it may be. So just become a quality person, and don't necessarily hold on to things that may not be serving you ultimately. So
sick. Jeffrey, where can people find you, bro?
Yeah, so Instagram is just Jeffrey Boadi, first name, second name. Twitter's the same with an underscore at the end. TikTok I don't use as much, but I'm kind of thereabouts. And then my website, jeffreyboadi.com, you can sign up to my newsletter there. I send out a free newsletter every Monday, talking about kind of different kind of strategies around health and well-being, certain recipes in there as well. So yeah, newsletter community.
We're going to link it. We're going to link it, guys. And to the listener who's gotten to this point in the podcast, first and foremost, thank you so much, guys. You know what you got to do. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share. Let us know what changes you are going to make and how you're going to start your health journey today in the comments. And yeah, guys, just make sure to continue to show love at WMBFD Pod. This has been another episode of What My Best Friend Does. If you didn't know, now you know. Now go outside and take some immediate action. Over and out.